I'm Ann Dart.
I'm Tracy Stormy.
And I'm Kathy Knight.
And together we are
It Was a Dark and Stormy Book Club,
a podcast for mystery lovers.
Welcome.
If you enjoy our show, please consider contributing to the Dark and Stormy Patreon. By becoming a patron, you will help us create better and quality content. There are also benefits to becoming a patron, such as exclusive content and Dark and Stormy merchandise. Become a supporter at patreon.com/darkandstormybc. Check our website for the link. We appreciate any and all contributions. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to episode 126 of Dark and Stormy Book Club. Today we have an interview with Michael Elias.
Michael Elias was born and raised in upstate New York. He has worked in motion pictures, television, and stage as an actor, writer, producer, and director in New York, Los Angeles, and London. He was a member of the Living Theatre and acted in The Brig by Kenneth Brown in New York and London. At WarnerBros, he and Rich Eustis created and produced the award-winning series Head of the Class that ran for 5 seasons on ABC. Elias wrote and directed the acclaimed jazz drama Lush Life. He was nominated as Best Director in the Cable Ace Awards. His produced screenplays include The Jerk, The Frisco Kid, Serial, Envoyez les Violons, if I'm saying that correctly, but probably not, and Young Doctors in Love. His play, The Catskill Sonata, about blacklisted artists, premiered in Los Angeles, directed by Paul Mazursky. The LA Weekly named it #1 in its list of 10 best plays of the year. Elias is a member of the Writers Branch of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and serves on its Foreign Language Committee. He is also a member of the WGA, the DGA, and PEN. He graduated from St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland, with a degree in mathematics and philosophy. Michael Elias lives in Los Angeles and Paris. In his new book, You Can Go Home Now, Nina is a tough Queens detective with a series of cold case homicides on her desk. Men whose widows had the same alibi. They were living in Artemis, a battered women's shelter, when their husbands were killed. Nina goes undercover into Artemis. Though she is playing the victim, she's anything but. Nina knows about violence and the bullies who rely on it because she's experienced it in her own life. In this heart-pounding thriller, Nina confronts the violence of her own past in Artemis, where she finds solidarity with a community of women who deal with abusive and lethal men in their own way. For the women living in Artemis, there is no absolute moral compass. There is the law, and there is survival. And for Nina, who became a cop so she could find the man who murdered her father, there is only revenge.
We would like to welcome Michael Elias to the program. He has written a fascinating book called You Can Go Home Now. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for inviting me on your show. I'm happy to be here.
You have been an actor, a screenwriter, and a director, and now a fiction author. Which hat do you enjoy wearing most?
Well, I would say I enjoyed wearing all of them. It's a good thing I started as an actor because I don't think I could do that now. There was a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry about whether you're going to work. It's a tense occupation. When people say, should my child become an actor? And I say, the question should be, should my child become a movie star? That's the best job in Hollywood. After that, as director, well, writers and actors can fight it out, but it's a tough profession. I love directing, especially when I was directing something I wrote, because I could get what I wanted from the talented actors. I guess this is inside, but directors are notorious rewriters of writers. They change stuff all the time, and being the director meant nobody could change my words. I would take suggestions from actors, but I couldn't have a director say, we're throwing this out, or I rewrote it. I would also just mention that right now, television, it's really a writer's medium because writers, they really control the medium in television much more than they do in film. Let's see. So what else was I? Then I was a novelist. I wrote a couple of novels. I really enjoyed that because I liked the solitude. I liked the ability to take my time and find solutions along the way. let my imagination run free and create, I don't want to say completely by myself, but in a solitary fashion. The rest of it, acting, producing, directing, creating television shows. It's a group experience. Writing a novel or short stories or a play, the writing of it is solitary, and there's a part of me that really likes that. Long answer. I hope I covered everything.
What drew you to write a story about battered and abused women?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think it started actually thinking about people who have been abused, and there's no more numerous class of people than women who have been abused and can be powerless and need a place to go and be safe. And I think maybe at the time I started thinking about this, I was reading a lot about abused women and about shelters. And I think there was also the whole thing about the NFL players and people in their past, women who were married to or with men who were abusive. And there seemed to be a lot of stories coming out about it. Not that this is new. And in fact, as you know, it's worse now with the virus that so many women are confined to their homes and they can't leave. There's even more abuse worldwide. I guess that propelled me to say, I think I'd like to write a story about this. And then I'd like to write a story and include in that story the notion of self-protection or women who are taking care of themselves in other ways. Then I combine that with the theme of revenge. So that's what propelled me. A sense of what I was noticing going on in the world and how to fit that into a story.
You've said that this is a book that has two stories in one. The way you wove the two together was pretty masterful, if we must say. Now, did you plan the ending before the actual story, or did it evolve as you wrote the book?
I think it evolved. Sometimes a title comes and that determines everything. And the title, You Can Go Home Now, which is said to women in the shelter, raised the question of why can you go home now? I arrived, the question and the answer. I don't think I had the exact ending when I started. For me, and I guess a lot of writers will say this, as you write the book, it takes you in different directions and you find things that you didn't intend. It's a journey, and as long as you're open, I'm going to say, listening to your characters in a way, somehow they tell you where to go. They tell you what they want to happen. It sounds a little fanciful, but I think it's true. I did not have the exact ending. To be honest, I guess without giving away the plot, the miracle baby who appears at the end, that was given to me, and I think it's so important. That came to me almost as I was finishing the book, and I had to go back and put her in. And that changed the ending, too. Or at least that gave me that climax that I needed.
Nina was a great character. We really enjoyed her. Is she going to be continued on, or is this just a one-off?
I do have an idea and 20 pages for another one, another Nina. I guess I can't say what that will be, but I am working on it. But in the meantime, I did start another novel, and that one took over. So that's what I'm working on now. It's another thriller, and this one takes place in Hawaii on the island of Maui. I'm doing that, but I'm well into it. I know what it's going to be. I tend to work on more than one thing at a time. When I get stuck on my Maui thriller, I'll probably continue the adventures of Nina. We'll see who gets there first.
Now, you obviously have a great sense of humor because you created and produced the TV series Head of the Class and then hit movies like The Jerk and Frisco Kid. The subject in this book is a lot darker. Which is the true Michael Elias?
Well, I would say that the darker version is the latest version of Michael Elias, but I never lost my sense of humor, and I hope readers will find a lot of humor in this dark novel. I think she's feisty, she's angry, she's sarcastic. I think she has funny observations sometimes, so it's not all gloom. She's pretty funny sometimes. So I can't write without humor because humor is a part of life and we have it no matter what. We even have it in our darkest times. I'm well and I'm happy and I try to be funny to my kids, to my grandkids, to my wife, and be amusing. And I think Nina is amusing too sometimes. There's a lot of tragedy in her life. She can be still funny.
Well, your last mystery novel, The Last Conquistador, came out in 2013. What made you jump back into mystery writing?
I really like doing it. And I think after The Last Conquistador, I started writing short stories because I didn't know what a next novel would be, or if I had a novel in me, another one. So I wrote short stories about my life in Hollywood. I wrote short stories about a Hollywood writer. They came out of my life, the stories, and I fictionalized them so I could tell the truth and not hurt anybody's feelings. So I wrote all those stories, but I adjusted it so that because it's about one character, a dozen stories, I made it into a novel. So there is sort of waiting in the sidelines another novel. That one's pretty flat out funny about a Hollywood writer, sort of like a Larry David, but less neurotic and more political and not as famous. What it's like to be a Hollywood writer over a period of years. And then I got this idea or this title, You Can Go Home Now. I said, gee, I think maybe there's a story I could attach to this. That's when I started writing it. I really enjoyed writing novels. And so here I am. And I guess there's been a friendly divorce between me and television. It's okay. I did a lot of television. I don't think I can go back to that. I really enjoy writing screenplays. The most pleasure for me at this point in my life is writing novels. And that's what I'm doing.
One of the biggest differences between true life law enforcement and fiction is that real officers are not able to devote 100% of their time to solving one case. As far as I know, you are the only author who portrays detectives as having more than one crime, including cold cases to deal with, and you did it very convincingly. What was your motivation for doing so?
Because I just thought that would be obvious. And now I'm going to go back and think about a lot of the novels, the detective novels I read and enjoy, from Donna Leon to Michael Connolly. They only had one case. It just seemed to me that cops, detectives, they work overtime because they have so many cases and maybe they get to solve 1 out of 10. I don't know. That just seemed to me to make sense. It seemed obvious writing about a detective wouldn't have time to just concentrate on one case. If you had 10 detectives, it can't be just 10 crimes that they're investigating. So that's why I did it. But thank you. That's really interesting. It seemed obvious to me.
On your website, on your in development page, we were amazed at the variety of works you describe. What is your favorite and most used source of inspiration?
I'll give you a flip answer, which is my life. The more I can mine my life and mine my observations, and that would probably be my main source of inspiration. I think what it shows is that I have a wide interest. I'm interested in science fiction. I'm interested in Elizabethan drama, Christopher Marlowe. I'm interested in a man who escapes from prison to save his wife, but if he gets caught, he'll go back for the rest of his life. All genres, all this interests me. It may have been actually bad for my career because in Hollywood, people tend to be pigeonholed. You write drama, you write comedy, rom-com. I want to write everything. In that sense, I guess my heroes are people like Anthony Burgess, who wrote a novel about Shakespeare, a novel about Marlowe, and he wrote a spy thriller, and he wrote Clockwork Orange. Everything is interesting. Well, The Last Conquistador was inspired by a trip to Peru in one of those, treks, Machu Picchu, the Inca Trail. But I came back and I thought about it and I said, what if there was an Inca city that was still alive? And that would be fun. I'll set it now and take a lot of my experiences and the people I met when I was in Peru. And that was that one. It just reflects that I have wide interests.
You gave the backstory of just about every character in the book except for Phyllis. Was there a reason behind this? If so, why?
I have to confess that it's a glaring and embarrassing omission. I don't think I did it on purpose. I just think I just kept going and didn't really tell her story. In my next Nina story, which is going to feature Phyllis, you bet she will have a backstory. Thank you for pointing that out to me. I don't know.
Well, I found myself very curious about that, so I had to ask.
I've been thinking of one now. I will, I promise you. She's a great character, but it's true. We don't know where she comes from. I love to write backstories. I can use so much that I know. I just insert a person and tell their story. So, yeah, backstories are great.
You've alluded to the fact of working on some new material. Can you give us a little more about that? Can you also let our listeners know your website so they can learn more about you and your books?
Sure. The book I'm working on now, my next novel, is called Night Dive, and it's about a man who's trying to solve the mystery of his wife's disappearance in an